Welcome to And Also, a podcast for the rest of the week. My name is John. I'm the lead pastor at Faith Alliance Church, and I'm joined each week by Kirk Steigler. He and I take a deeper dive into the previous week's message, and we look into the concepts and the scripture and the ideas that made up that message and work to apply them into our lives. We don't want to just talk about things that happened on Sunday. We want to talk about things that happen on Sunday that make a difference in our lives on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and through the rest of the week. So join us as we have a dialogue about what really matters in life, a life faithful to Christ, and how we can apply the things that were said in community in order for us to live and lead changed lives in our world. This is episode 6 of And Also with Kirk Steigler and myself. And we are taking a little bit of a detour from this series called Origin Story in the Book of Genesis, wild and crazy as it is, and looking into Palm Sunday, and then even looking ahead, since we're kind of in the middle, we're in Holy Week, maybe looking back at Palm Sunday, but then even looking ahead into the Easter story, Good Friday, Easter, and kind of couching ourselves in the middle of that. So that said, Kirk, explain the entirety of Holy Week in 30 seconds.
Sure. Each day gets a special name. So Monday, Thursday, Holy Friday, and then everyone waits on Saturday, and then Easter. Nothing happened Tuesday or Wednesday. They just sat around. That was it.
They hung out.
They just, yeah.
I don't know. Grade for Jesus. That was a pretty big deal, and now we're just hanging out. What's going on?
Yeah. Woo, that was a lot. Someone bring the donkey back. But whose job was that? They don't talk about that. They go fetch, but not bring back. What happened there? Did it just wander back on its own?
Or they just tie him up somewhere at the end of the parade?
The other part I love is that the Lord needs him, and they didn't ask which Lord. They just said, "Oh, okay," and off it goes. That's great.
No question, no hesitance or reluctance. Just like, all right, obviously it's yours.
So I'm wondering if the people that they borrowed the colt from, because it mentions colt, not just donkey, right? It's the colt of a donkey, the foal of a donkey. So I'm wondering if those people were followers of Jesus up to that point.
And
when the disciples say the Lord needs it, then they understand it is Jesus, not just anybody, right? Not just some other Roman official.
And because that's the other thing. The other thing I didn't bring up is that Lord means it basically means sir, right? So like it's a higher reverence, but they don't. The disciples don't define who, and Jesus doesn't tell them to. He just says, "Tell them the Lord needs it." And what? Yeah, you're right. What Lord is this for? Roman officials? Is it for? So, in that, it's interesting that would change the story, not the entire emphasis, but the story context, if that family, whoever it is, would have known who Jesus was.
Now, the other part that's funny, we're looking at that particular moment, is this is the colt of a donkey, and everyone knows donkeys are super compliant and easy to train. So that's why it was so easy to ride, no problem. And off it went with the disciples easily and went right. Jesus just hopped on and off we go. That part is great to me, that you have the world's most famously obstinate animal chosen, and not just one that's used to having to put up with people, because they put up with us. They don't comply. One that is not used to people yet, right? This is the colt, right? This is one that's just like, I hate everyone. All right, starting off, and that is the one that they ride on, and off it goes. So I wonder, comically to myself, maybe, but I wonder, if this colt that they found just tied to a post out front was being punished, and that's why it was on a post out front. Like, why was it just standing around there? They didn't have it in a pen with everything else.
You're on a timeout.
Yeah, you're in timeout, pal. And when they said the Lord needs it, you bet, take it, right? Yeah. You got it. We don't even want it back. That's it. Off it goes. Because we never hear donkey returns.
That's true.
Right?
Well, you know, it's funny. I mentioned this in first service, not in second. But you know, Robin works at this farm and she keeps horses, and there's a donkey at this farm, at one of the farms she works at, and she says when she lets the donkey out, it just goes crazy. Like it brays and it kicks and it's kind of like excited to be out, but also like, you know, don't tell me what to do. It just has its own, like, it just doesn't really want to react to you at all. It just, you know, it waits with hesitancy and then it just goes into the field or pen or whatever. Whereas horses are more obvious, you know, depending on their level of training, but they're a little bit more compliant. They'll listen, they'll follow, they wait, and so like it's comical. Like I tried to talk about just how big of a deal the fact that it was a donkey, because they're not only comical and stupid looking, but they're also obstinate. They don't listen, and they just have a mind of their own. Like Robin was telling me as well, that not at her farm, but just generally that donkeys are used to protect sheep, because if you kind of approach a donkey with menacingly, I don't know how you do that, but if you did, it would push back, like it would fight back. There's an offensive side to a donkey, whereas a horse, if you kind of spook a horse, is going to run away. It doesn't, you know, horses are prey animals. They run, but she said donkeys will actually like hold their line. So it's not only that, you know, maybe that's why they say that the scripture says they set Jesus upon it. Maybe they're like, okay, someone hold the donkey and we're going to get him on it, because like, it's not going to listen to us. It's just, you know, who knows what it was doing.
That is, they're amazing little creatures. Actually, you figure they wander the Judean wilderness on their own, where there are lions, right? So these are animals that are fighting stuff off on their own. They could care less about us little goofy humans. Yeah. What do you want? Hey, Schmay. Okay, thanks, but I'm leaving. All right, that's it.
It's like the cat of the equine world.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, I guess. Yeah,
I suppose could have done this myself. Well, and I, you know, the symbolism of the donkey, not only bringing peace, but just, I think it just, at least for us, you know, not for me personally, not having worked with donkeys or horses, it's just more symbolic than it is actual. But it's just ridiculous. Like if you had the choice of a horse or a donkey, which I'm sure Jesus had, you know, I'm sure he could have gone to, you know, and say, hey, go tell him this horse is available. Tell him the Lord needs it. He'd get a horse. So I don't think economics were the issue. He could have, you know, he had enough horses around. It's not like the donkey was the only one. In fact, he had to go to the next town over. Right?
Actually, think about that for a second, though, because who had the horses?
Royalty? With
the Romans, right?
Oh, yeah.
Romans and royalty had the horses, not the civilians, right? So the folks walking around in town, that was it. They were walking around. They had camels, right? The wise men came on camels,
right?
They didn't come on horses. And then the regular folks, donkeys was about it, right? Because you had a farm animal like an ox or a donkey.
Yeah,
you don't hear about everybody going horses, right? Except for David, right? So David and Absalom riding through the woods on horseback. But true. Other than that, you don't hear a lot about horses for the common folk.
That's true.
So yeah, it's a more I'm one of you guys kind of a thing.
Yeah. Which makes it all the more like, if he's going to carry all the symbolism of coming as a king, but then doing it on a donkey, it's just like I just like that, because it totally subverts. It's kind of like and I mentioned this before, but it's kind of like it meets an expectation, like, oh, good, he's going to finally overturn the Roman Empire, but then it simultaneously subverts the expectation. And it's like, you don't, like, it's almost like, I don't know what to do with this image. It's wonderful. It's like, okay, yeah, I am going to overturn, but not in the way you think. And so obviously, at some point they missed that not in the way you think part. But just the effort that went through to communicate that through a donkey without Jesus ever saying, hey, by the way, although he did say, I'm going to my death, but he didn't say, by the way, this is all going to be, great right now, but, it's not going to happen the way you think. He doesn't correct them. He communicates through the donkey, but he doesn't actually correct them in their thinking as they think they're going to overturn the Roman government.
It's, the riding into town, right? Literally riding into town, into the city walls.
Yeah.
Instead of, getting off your animal, whatever your ride is there, and walking in, like through the eye of the needle part, right?
Yeah.
You try to get the camels in. But which is an actual doorway, by the way.
Yeah.
for people who are listening and thinking I'm talking about an actual sewing needle. It's a kind of doorway in the old city. But there's so much, actually, the imagery of all that, the instantaneous reaction of all the people, because it's not like the disciples are running through with t-shirt cannons, right? They're hyping the people up. They're just all of a sudden Jesus is riding on a donkey and everyone lights up.
Yeah,
immediately.
Yeah,
That's pretty amazing.
You think word? I mean, I kind of mentioned that word would have likely have spread, but I wonder that too. Like, how many people were there, and then how did word get out? Did they just see it and they joined in? Did they hear the disciples and they're like, "Oh, this is something's going on"?
That part is really interesting to me because you have just he's walked into Jerusalem a few times before now to no party. Right? Just wandering in. This time, hops on a donkey, people light up. Did they have, New Orleans jazz, second line going on in front? I don't think so. Nobody announced anything. Just this time, the crowd reacts. And the fact that he makes the statement, if they didn't, the rocks would cry out. Makes me think that counter to the incident with the Legion, right, into the pigs, where there's this overwhelming swarm of oppressive demonic force that kills in one move, right? Takes out all those pigs. The opposite happens here, where heaven sends something to inhabit, something to praise, right? And it inhabits the people easily, but could just as easily have made the rocks sing out, which there's a lot of rocks. Just in case you haven't been to Israel, there's a lot of rocks. So if the rocks are crying out, that would be incredibly deafeningly loud. But it's just an amazing thing that suddenly this crowd turns, right? That's
I've not thought about that, but about just obviously, there's spiritual things happening, but just as far as specifically to the response of the crowd. But like, you think of the Psalms, that the heavens declare the glories of God. So it's like you've got, the trees clap their hands, and I know it's referencing, the trees through the wind, but actual, personable traits to creation. And I wonder if there's, the kind of the backing that is not only that just it reflects back to God, but that there's a part of all of creation is groaning, right? In Romans, all of creation is groaning, and that maybe the triumphal entry is like that, but released for a moment. Like all of a sudden, it's like, okay, this is not only the kind of the static creation, the rocks, but humanity too gets kind of caught up in that, and they just kind of can't help but gather and rejoice. It's interesting.
Can't help but rejoice. Yeah. They can't stop themselves.
Yeah. I know that you have connection with a different stream as well, which I think does play into Holy Week a lot more, honors Holy Week a lot more. It raises the level of honoring Holy Week. And I think one of the critiques that I would bring is that even like anytime I'm in the middle of Holy Week, I'm like, this is amazing. Like the Triumphal Entry, and that you're up, and then Good Friday you're down, then Easter Sunday you're up. It's this incredible spread of just human emotion in the finishing. Like you said, the finishing of Scripture. I mean, it's just amazing, and I think the church calendar really plays into this Lent, and then Pentecost after. You get this really good, rich history through the church calendar that I think, at least in our tradition, in our stream, we miss. Like I know we didn't do anything with Ash Wednesday or Lent, and to kind of prepare the way. And so you get to Holy Week, and you're kind of like, at least for me, I'm kind of like hit with all this stuff, and then it doesn't go away, but it's like you kind of well, I guess it kind of does go away. You kind of in one door, like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, and then out the next, you're like, okay, now what's next, as opposed to, okay, now we move on to Pentecost and so on. So I just think there's something to be missed in not really taking Holy Week in context with the rest of the church calendar. I think there's the church calendar is there to kind of lead you to Holy Week, and we don't. I don't. We don't do that very clearly.
There's a distinct reverence for the symbolism of
right.
And the remembrance of what's occurred, right? Because it's the most significant part.
Right.
This is why we say we are who we are, and why we attend in church buildings, right?
Right. Correct.
Because of this day.
Yeah.
The loaves and fishes were super cool, but death and resurrection, holy moly, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's even Paul says. Paul says, if there's no resurrection, then we have no faith. There's no, so
there's no point.
Yeah. So really, I mean, you're right. There's a lot of cool stuff, but really, this is about it. And again, I think there's emphasis, although this year and last year not as much. There's emphasis on Holy Week, but I and again, maybe I'm just I'm in the middle of it, so I'm caught up in it right now. There's emphasis on it, and as there should be, but there's not a lot of preparation or reflection on it, right? So that you don't prepare into it. Again, Lent does, but in our tradition, we don't really celebrate, and there's no reflection on it. Okay, it's great. Once Holy Week or once Easter happens, excellent. Okay, now we'll move to April 11th. What's next? And then we just go back into our series. Fine, which is what we'll do. Fine, but there's something to be said about, okay, how do we now reflect on what's just happened? How do we follow the church calendar up and through into Pentecost, which helps us to really understand what's happening. And so it doesn't ruin the reverence, but it definitely I think there's a harder time getting there. Right. Whereas the church calendar helps you to get there, celebrate it, and then
there's something to be said though. Yes and no. I think that having such a calendar, like a hard calendar like that, forces the reminder in front of you, just like any calendar app that you have that, hey, by the way, today's your dentist appointment, right? Something like that. Oh yeah. But there's also, it can promote a complacency because you see it coming, and it's the same as last year and the year before that, and the excitement for it maybe lacks. Whereas, for example, coming from this tradition now, where it's less formalized, and when you hit it with new eyes every time. It's kind of nice as well. There's positives to both, right?
Well, yeah.
So it depends on what works for you. Like some people find something deep and sincere in the scheduled repetition and remembrance.
Yeah,
and that's deeply significant for them. And some people just see that as something that's happened, and they're moving forward with the knowledge of, right? And then you revisit it.
Yeah,
I think that's where we are here. But yeah, it's an amazing thing to look at to look at the events of how much is jammed into this week.
Yeah,
like just historically, is this how weeks went just on a daily basis for the Roman Empire. Even that, if you just look at that, like this was, some officials having to deal with, other officials, local officials who had gotten all agitated and, having to deal with, this guy, that guy, they had other people in prison.
Right.
As you recall, there's Barabbas, right? So Barabbas gets called out a little later. There's not a lot of mention of him in the Bible other than that moment, but historically Josephus mentions him, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that all this is going on, and Pilate's kind of used to it, and even does that demonstration that he washes his hands, right?
Yeah.
To show the crowd, it's your problem now. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to conclude episode 6
that happy note.
At this point. It used to be for brevity's sake. Now it's not for full brevity's sake, but just to make sure that we, don't keep going for an hour at a time. But thanks for doing this, Kirk, and we'll see you after Easter. We'll be after all that conversation about the calendar. We will be back in our series on Genesis, but look forward to that, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, sounds good.